Welcome back to my new video. This video we are going to load a data set and then upload our vector embeddings to Pinecone. Okay, then after we uploaded these vector embeddings, we're going to query those vector embeddings for a response. Okay, so as you can see in my code editor, I've imported some libraries, the Pinecone, the Openai, PQDM, and then a load data set. So if you don't have this one installed, I think you can just do pip install data set. Okay, this is a Hugging Face data set. Okay, and then I have the Pinecone API key, the environment variable, as well as the Openai API key. So we want to initialize our Pinecone. So it's just going to be Pinecone.init, and then we pass in the API key as well as the environment variable. Okay, so that is what we are going to do. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to use a model to use. Okay, so we're going to call it model is equal to text embedding adder 002. So that's our model. And then we are going to load the track data set from load underscore data set. And then we pass in the data that we want to load, which is track. And then we pass in split is equal to train. And then we grab the first 1000 rows from this data set. So I'm going to just possibly import I'm going to import pandas so that we can visualize this data set pandas as PD. So we call PD the data frame, and then we pass in track, and then we visualize the first 10 rows. So as you can see, it's coming from a Hugging Face data set, and this is how the data set looks like. The text versus the two other columns. So that is the data set we are going to be working with. Okay. The next thing we are going to do is to load a batch of this data set into our, so let's see, length of track. So yeah, so as you can see, it's 1000. So the next thing we are going to do is we are going to load a batch of this data set. So we are going to consider 32 of these batches. So we are going to use the for loop for I in TQ DMA just to give us a progress bar. So range from 0 to the length of track, and then we pass in the text column as well as the batch size that we want to consider. Okay. So the next thing we are going to do is we want to set the end position of the batch. Okay. So we're going to say end underscore POS is equal to the minimum of I plus the batch size as well as the length of the track data set. So if we print this and POS, if we print this, this is how we're going to get from 32 to 64, 64 to 96 in that order. So in batch of 32. Okay, so I'm going to delete this. The next thing we are going to consider is to get the batch of lines and IDs. Okay, so lines batch is equal to prec, and then we select the text column, and then we say I to I plus the batch size. And if we print this line batch, you see that the first row is in batch of 32, 64, 96 in that order. Okay, so that is the lines batch. I'm going to take out that. And then the IDs. So the reason why we want the batch and then the ID is that with Pinecone, we want to create the data in a form of ID and then the values together with the metadata. Okay, so those are the three things that we need to consider if we want to store the data in Pinecone. Okay, so the ID's batch is equal to string of n, and then we say n in range. We want to pass in I, and then the n position. Okay. So if we print just the ID batch, IDs batch, you see that the IDs are in 0 to 31, and then from 32 to 63, okay, in that order. So these are the IDs. The next thing we are going to do is to create our embeddings. So we're going to use response is equal to openai dot embedding dot create. And this create, we are going to pass in the input batch. Okay. So the input is equal to lines batch, as well as the engine we are going to use is going to be the model. So once we do that, we can get the embeds as we did in the previous videos. Embeds is equal to, for record in response, we want to grab the data part of it. And then we'll say record. Then we grab the embedding key. Okay. So that is what we are doing here. So if we print the embeddings, okay, I don't want to print the embed. Okay, let me print it and let's see. Print. Let me not print it because it's going to take a fee for doing that. So I'll just do it in one time. So the next thing we want to do is to create our metadata. Create metadata. So we say metadata is equal to, is going to be a dictionary, and then the key is going to be text. And then there's going to be a line for line in line batch. Okay, that is going to be our metadata. So if I print how the metadata is going to look like, you can see this is how the metadata is going to look like. Okay. Okay, so then metadata is going to be a dictionary with a text as the key, and then the text as the row in the data set as the value. Okay, that's what this metadata looks like. So the next thing we want to do is to offset data into Pinecone. So we're going to use index. We haven't created. Okay, let's create the index first. Create index. Okay, so we're going to say if Openai not in Pinecone dot list indexes, we want to create the index. So Pinecone dot create index, and then we're going to call it Openai. And then we are going to take the dimension to be the length of the embeds and the index 0. Also, we want to consider the metric. The metric we are going to use will be, let's say, cosine. So that's how we're going to create our index. So now we can offset and say we can connect. So the next thing we need to do is to connect to index. So it's going to be index is equal to Pinecone dot index, and then we pass in our index that we want to connect to. The next thing we want to do is now to offset. So we're going to say index.offset. Here we want to pass in the vectors. Vectors is equal to, we want to zip IDs batch as well as the embeds as well as the metadata. Once we zip this, we want to make it into a list. Okay, we want to convert that to a list. So we are done with offsetting. So now we want to come out of the for loop. So let's run this. So as you can see, if we go to our Pinecone dashboard, you see now the Openai index is creating or is initializing. So let's wait for it to finish. So as you can see, our index is ready for use. Let's see how many vectors we have in there. About 128 vectors. No namespace. 100 and okay, so we are still offsetting, so it's still loading. So let's wait for it to finished, we have a lot of data to upset, so it's still running. So let's wait for it. So you can see that the vectors are changing. Yeah, the vectors are changing, as you can see the numbers here. And we have the dimension to be 1536, and we are using cosine similarity distance metric here. So as you can see, the vectors are still uploading. And yeah, so let's wait for it. We are about 53% almost. So let's wait. So now, as you can see, we are 100% done with the upload. So let's go back. So as you can see on the dashboard, we have about 1,000 vectors uploaded. So the next thing we can do is to query this Pinecone. So we're going to say create a query embeddings. Okay, so what we want to query from the Pinecone. So we're going to say Q is equal to what can you say about Russia? Okay, so that is our query. And then we're going to say SQ is equal to Openai. So we're going to create embeddings for this embeddings for this query. We're going to say create, and then we pass in the input to be Q, and then the engine is also going to be model. And then we're going to extract the data out of that response. We're going to consider the zero index as well as the embeddings key. Also include data. Or response this also